In my opinion, that's a bad product for WA. Just a aquatherm product. It's normally used for a warm water system or a hot water system. In WA, we run our hot water systems a lot higher than what they do in Europe. So it's a European product. Our systems run a lot faster in a recirculating ring main. We have more chlorine. So those three things combined affect the longevity of these pipes. If I was buying an apartment in Perth, the first thing I'd be looking at is what the hot water pipe is. And if it's aquatherm, I'd be running for the hills.
Russell, welcome back to the Developing WA podcast. You're in the guest seat again. Great to be back sitting in the host seat again, taking you on board. How are we feeling this morning?
No, it's good to be here. Very a bit fresh this morning, but we got the heater on early and we're into it, both rugged up, jumpers on.
Bloody freezing outside this morning. The winter's coming into
You've
full
got
effect.
more hair than me, so that's
protecting the top of your head.
Yeah, where all the heat loss comes, they tell me.
That's exactly right. All right, well, let's get straight into it. So we're going to go into the boom and what it's hiding. So right now, the WA building is just crazy. There's a surge in approval, there's a surge in starts. Everybody's just flat out. So from where you're standing as a bloke who has had to design the guts of all of these buildings, what's the surge actually doing to the quality of what's going up?
Everything's running really, really tight, and that goes from labour to materials to anyone that's in a fixed term contract, or any builder that's locked into a fixed contract from 2 years ago is now bearing all the brunt of the interest rate rises and the minimum wage increases and the fuel increases, and unfortunately they've got no room to move. They're on the fixed contract. Yes, you could argue that some of those margins are built in. I would argue that very rarely have builders been able to afford those. They can absorb some of those increases, but certainly not all of them. It squeezes everything. So, of course, you're going to send your better labour and your better guys to more profitable jobs. It makes sense. You're not going to sort of give all your best labour to the job that's underperforming. It's just like you just want to get that done. You throw all the cheap labour at it, and that's the reality. You start compromising on material because none of it gets checked, and that's just what happens when everything gets tight.
And you're saying because of this surge that's going on at the moment, do you tend to find that you're working a lot harder, or are you saying no a lot more to jobs that you would normally take on?
We try and accommodate where we can. I guess the biggest thing for us is our turnaround time and what that looks like, and we do things within this business to be able to expedite that. The reality is that everyone's time poor, so they've spent a lot of time in DA, a lot of time in getting their building permit organised. Everyone's now raring to go. They've been waiting 6 months, 12 months, whatever that is, to go through the approval process, and everyone wants everything done yesterday. So it does become a case of you have to try and prioritise what people want. Some people come really organised. That's rare. Some people come, scrambling, saying, we needed this yesterday. What can you do? Hurry up.
So where are those cracks already showing? Where are the corners being cut right now that the rest of the market hasn't noticed yet, but you can already see coming?
Skilled labour is huge. The old saying is they don't build them like they used to, and there's different construction methodologies and different materials getting used. But from what we're seeing out there, the skills shortage, like you could argue that there's not a people shortage, there's a skills shortage. And it's like when we talk skills, like someone might be qualified, but doesn't mean they're skilled. It means they've been ticked off as just punch it out, get as many people through the system as you can. But those people that lack the quality of building and the quality of tradesman-like workmanship is questionable.
And with that, who ends up paying for the poor quality of work in the end? Does that tend to be the builder? Does it tend to be the developer or the person who's buying that property?
One thing we find very hard is we do a lot of expert witness reports and a lot of loss adjusting reports. And what we see is something that may be compliant because the Australian standard doesn't pull out bad workmanship or poor workmanship. So it might be to the letter of the law, it might pass the test, but from a professional point of view, like we will go there and there'll be pipe that is half clipped or there's glue all over it and the pipe's wonky, or you can see that it's been installed in the wrong location, then it's got 15 bends to get it back to where it needs to be. You can see someone's missed it or they've had to jack the concrete up, and there's nothing in the NCC or the Australian standards that says you can't do that. It just looks shit, and you're just looking at it going, what the fuck have they done there? And it's like, was that compliant? And it's like, Well, yeah, it is, but it screams desperate. It screams that someone hasn't really understood what they're doing, and that's the challenging bit.
And it comes back like you can spot this stuff pretty much straight away. You know, you've had 20 years of experience on the tools doing this plumbing stuff yourself. You understand what it's like to be on the other end where you're receiving these plans and they're bloody everywhere. And you can spot that when you're walking past the job, can't you?
Yeah, and it is in all fairness, it's easy to pick out someone else's faults. The beautiful thing that we understand is we've been at that coalface. We've installed those pipes before. We understand that things get missed, and you can see when you're generally looking at something and you go, they've had a red hot crack at that. The reason that's looking like that is because there's an afterthought or that someone's missed something, and you can see they've had to offset around a beam, and you're like, probably should have been cast in, but that's building 101. Obviously, we always try and avoid that, but yeah, the workmanship, you can see it a mile away.
So when you walk past a new build going up and you're on site for the first time, you don't necessarily know the project yet. What's the first thing that you look at and what gives away a job that is going to have problems?
It normally starts with the site presence. So you walk past a building site and you can see the builders got the site fencing up or the temporary hoarding up. If that's a solid hoarding, like you walk past a job in, somewhere in town, like the ECU building, you'll see the multiplex, and they're very, very rigid on their hoarding. You'll see all the safety signs are up. They'll have the site supervisor's contact details. There'll be a turnstile that goes in and counts the guys coming in and out of the site. There might even be cameras there. A lot of it will be AI generated stuff that will count visitor numbers. There'll be a sign-in process. It'll be a digital sign-in process where everything's recorded. If you walk through that level of professionalism, you generally know what you're going to expect on the other side. On the flip side, you walk past a building site that all the mesh fencing's all fallen over. It's temp fencing. No one's gone and fixed it up. Everything's hanging its ass out. There's stuff flying in the breeze. There's rubbish all strewn over the site. There's no skip bins on site. There's no sign-in process. It's just like, people walking around with no hard hats on. You get what you accept. So, and what we mean by that, if you accept that, that's what you're going to get. There's some good builders in town that you walk past their sites and you'll go, and not always the case, don't get me wrong, but it's a good start. Yeah, it's as I guess the product is as messy as your ute or as messy as your site. It screams complications, it screams no idea, it screams we're fumbling our way through it.
What's the failure type you're getting called to look at this year that you weren't getting called to look at about 5 years ago? What's something new that's on that list?
We went down and witnessed some of the pipe removal getting removed from someone's house. And as you can appreciate, the walls were smashed apart. Every wall, the water pipe coming in, the shower, the tiles, the cabinetry. And remembering that this is someone's brand new home. This is the biggest purchase they've ever made. Probably, maybe the only big purchase they've ever made. That's their dream home, and to see it in the state that it was in, and the fact that they've got to fight for that. Yeah, and they're the battlers that are copping it, just because they did everything that anyone else would have done. They went in, they met with their home builder, and they signed up. They didn't sign up for this, but this is a byproduct of what they've got.
And why is that happening now? What's changed in the way that buildings are being designed or built that's making this pop up?
Things are changing in WA. So we're now, over 50% of our water is now desal, which means all the nutrients get stripped out of that through that process because it's seawater. And then the nutrients they've got to be reintroduced because you're getting rid of the salt and all the other stuff, and then to reintroduce the nutrients back into it. So it's the water we're using today is a completely different product than what we're using years ago. It was rainwater or coming from the aquifer, so there's more chlorine and there's more products that have that need to stabilise this water and treat the the bacteria in the water. So these pipes are finding that the chemical interaction with these pipes is all new. They're not compatible. They're wearing out quicker and faster and sooner. The iPlex, for an example, is a classic example, and that's probably roughly a 3 to 5 year turnaround where the product fails. We're seeing some Aquatherm product, which you see more of a commercial. That's more of an insulated pipe through a lot of apartments, and we're seeing that. And that's in my opinion, it's a bad product for WA. It's normally used for a warm water system or a hot water system. In WA, we run our hot water systems a lot higher than what they do in Europe, so it's a European product. And our systems run a lot faster in a recirculating ring main, and we have more chlorine. So those three things combined affect the longevity of these pipes. If I was buying an apartment in Perth, the first thing I'd be looking at is what the hot water pipe is, and if it's aquatherm, I'd be running for the hills.
With that, pick the one reoccurring hydraulic failure that you'd most like every builder and developer in WA listening to actually understand. What is it? Where is it happening? And why does it keep happening?
I'd point them to stormwater, box gutters, overflows, and just in general, stormwater on the roof.
In plain English, can you walk me through what actually goes wrong? Something that, someone who's looking to buy a house would be looking for?
Box gutters you see in some more high-end homes. There's two types of people out there. There's a builder that's been burnt by a box gutter before and fucking hates them. Mm-hmm. Or there's people that'll just oversize them because they're like, just whatever the box gutter is, just double it because they don't understand it. The issue we have with that is the architect does the roof plan, and if you haven't got a hydraulic consultant that's done the calculations to size those roof plans, then that can get missed. The plumber won't size it. The roof plumber will install it as per the architect that's drawn it. The certifier doesn't understand the box gutter sizing. It's probably not really his job, but he's on the hook for it. And between the 3 or 4 people that are responsible for that, the builder, the architect, the certifier, the roofing plumber, and the hydraulic plumber consultant, between those 5, we've still seen it slip through most of the time.
And what's it costing when that goes wrong? Is that time, money, or is it both?
An absolute shitload. And generally speaking, like we've done a couple on high-end residential apartments, and guess what? Penthouses at the top. Where does the water come in? Straight from the top. Water finds its lowest level and holds no bars, no holes. It'll run through that building until it can't run anymore, and it'll go through ceilings, it'll trace down walls. It's hard to fix and even more to rectify.
And whose fault is it really when that stuff happens?
It's so hard, but I would say the roofing code in Australia is through the NCC and it's through AS 3500.3. Now, humour me this, but AS 3500.3 is the only unregulated chapter of the AS 3500. So we've got licensed plumbing board, we've got inspectors, none of them will touch AS 3500.3. And that's where our biggest problem is. I suspect they don't touch it because it's too big to look at and would be replacing just about everything in Perth.
So when this kind of failure does show up, how much of it is on the builder at the end of the day? How much is it on the design? And how much on the system that lets it through?
To be perfectly honest, I would make the roofing trade a licensed trade as it was back in the day. You had to be a licensed plumber to do roofing. That's no longer the case. That's changing over east. And it's the pain. So the pain of change. Until the pain is greater than what we're experiencing now, no one will change. But once that pain becomes too great, they'll then start changing and go, you know what, we need to do something about this because we can't, there's too much pain over here and it's not as painful now to change and to bring this legislation in to make it a licensed trade than it is to deal with these issues over here. But who gets the blame? So you would argue that the licensed builder should know better. You would argue the architect, you designed it incorrectly. The architect's like, well, you should have had a hydraulic consultant verify the sizes. The roof plumber, can't touch him. He's unlicensed. He's just a lackey. Building certifier, you certified the building. Why didn't you say the box gutters weren't sized properly? And then the hydraulic consultant was like, well, where were you? Well, we didn't size the roof. That's not our gig. So it's a multi-layer. And then at the end of it, you've got either the developer or the end user that pays for it.
Are you, as an inspector, are you catching this stuff? Are the certifiers catching this stuff? If not, why?
The builder's registration came out the other day and we're highly recommending that any box gutters or roof gutters be certified and signed off by a licensed or a regulated hydraulic consultant, which is not, we're not here pushing that just because that's our gig. It's a smart move, but it's something that they're not used to having to do. So a lot of councils are now asking for it as well. And a lot of certifiers as well are going, well, I'm not, because they've been on the hook for it, going, well, you certified it that it was all to code, and now we're finding out through the loss adjuster, OTG have been out and they've said that it's not to code. You said it was to code, and now we're up for 250 grand of rectification. So everyone wants to pass the buck. So the building certifiers are now going, well, why should I have my cock on the chopping block? If you want me to certify that, go and get the hydraulic engineer or get someone to certify that that box gun and that roof is deemed to satisfy.
So look, we've kind of blaming the system that's letting this stuff through. Let's start to talk about the system itself. We're going to look into whose fault it is and who's actually getting it right. You've said before that the system rewards cutting corners. Can you be specific with that? What about the system? What's the rule, the gap, the loophole, or the financial incentive that's actually doing the rewarding with that?
So everything's cost driven. We know that, and everything, even from right at the start, like even before the developer is looking at the land, they are looking at the yield. So they're going, right, we've got 2,000 square metres. It's an R100 site. We can fit, we can go up to 18 stories, obviously depending on the suburb. They're like, well, we can fit 200 apartments on that. It's going to cost me this amount for the build. They're looking at the yield and they're going, does it stack? Because they know the construction costs are now, escalating quite high. So to make that work on a financial model, they need to get that yield. And to get that yield, they need to compress as many apartments or as many products out of that one build. So it starts from there. So they want, let's call it 200 apartments. And from that, we've all got to then try and design to get all that to happen. So then you've got the consultants layer and you're like, fuck me, like it's $500,000 in design fees. To the developer, that looks like a lot of money and a lot of wasted money. But everyone from that point there, everyone's on the squeeze. Everyone's squeezed. Everyone's so mindful that construction cost is going to be a long delayed project. They're on the squeeze from the get-go. And what happens then is they go to the cheapest designer, then they go to the cheapest builder, and the builder has to go, well, fuck me, like I'm stretched. I'd love to give it to the $300,000 plumber, but there's a $200,000 plumber there, and if we don't use that, someone else will, and we've got to try and win this job. So let's use Gary's price at 200, and that's where it starts.
And who's benefiting from the way that it's working at the moment?
No one.
No one's benefiting.
No one.
Well, that's just bloody great, isn't it? And who's paying for it?
We'll run two scenarios here. You look at, let's call it Subi 1 with multiplex. So anyone that bought in that Subi 1 project, no question, over the 2 years of the construction cost, would have made money. Who paid? That money didn't get fabricated out of thin air. Either multiplex paid for that through their fixed price contracts and copped that on the way through. Multiplex are very smart. I'd imagine commercially they would have protected themselves. But someone had to pay. That 20% was an uplift or an escalation in construction cost or just the market moving. So anyone that's done that well. And then you've probably got the people down in Scarborough that had the sunset clause called on them, whereas they could go back to the market after a certain amount of time. That if the building hadn't been constructed by that time, they had a right to go back and adjust the contract value. And I think from memory, some went from 800 to 1.1 round figures. And so that's the developer capturing those costs. So Subi 1, developer wears it, or the builder wears it. Scarborough, the contract gets ripped up and you either take it for 1.1 or you rip up your contract at 800.
At the end of the day, it's dependent on the situation. It could be the developer that ends up paying. It could be the purchaser. It's dependent.
Yeah, and you could, better luck, there's probably better luck than good management. Those clauses in those contracts, in fairness to the developer, would you want him to start at 800 knowing that it's going to cost him 1.1? I can guarantee you right now, you would not want that because that's where the shortcuts start. So everyone needs to make money, and everyone loves to make money. So really, it shouldn't be. It would be, in catching rainbows in the rainforest. It would be you do it for this. Everyone makes money on the way through. No one's killing it. Everyone's just making a good, even clip. But unfortunately, that's not reality.
Unfortunately not. So with reality, if you could change one thing tomorrow about how these buildings are getting approved, signed off, and certified in WA, what would you change?
I think it comes down to accountability. So we're accountable for the design. But then the plumber is then accountable for the install. So regardless of what we design, it comes down to him what he installs. So the plumber's like, well, I'm here on contract only. Like I'm here on construct only, and I'm just putting in what you drew. And if we haven't drawn it properly, and he installs it as we've drawn it, he's the one that's on the hook.
Yeah.
To me, in my opinion, being that guy on site, that's fucked.
And so why hasn't that changed already?
That's a good question. Look, it's catching up. There's more onus on the design over east, and we will slowly form in that. But for training in our industry, there's none. To train a hydraulic consultant, there's one course that's backed up 300 deep in Queensland.
And would you say that's what's standing in the way of this change not happening already? There isn't that skilled labour coming in?
Yeah, for love nor money can we get plumbers off the tools to come into design, and unskilled labour coming into the design field and having a crack. And you can't fault them because there's just that lack of supply coming through.
Yeah, well, calling to any engineers out there that want a bit of a niche to get into, go into hydraulic design.
Come on down.
Get on down, get some skilled labour. There's job opportunities everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Enough doom. Let's talk about what's actually happening right, who's actually getting it right. Don't name names if you don't want to, but tell me about the builders, the developers, the project types that you'd point to say, this is how the rest of WA should be doing it.
Yeah, it's rare, and very few out there doing that. And again, in their defence, it's a tough environment. There's no question about it. There's a real transition out there at the moment between the small commercial coming into the mid-sized commercial. Like we've had the pro builds of the world. We've had a couple of the bigger builders at the top end of town fall over for obvious reasons that we've talked about before, fixed term contracts, all that sort of shit. And then we've had the mid-tier space who are sort of moving in that direction, but they're probably struggling. They're not used to these bigger builds. And so as they transition through, they bring their labour that suits them. So if a plumber's never done high-rise, and then that builder's never done high-rise, and then they move up, and then they drag that same plumber that they've always known, and he started off doing houses with me, and then now he's doing medium density residential. They bring that with them. Now, you could argue that there's some mid-field guys doing an average job at Tier 1. You could also say that there's some average guys doing Tier 1 work on volume. But what we're seeing at the moment is some of the smaller guys coming through, and what they lack in experience, they make up in drive. They're new, they're fresh, they're keen. They're not these busted ass, burnt out project managers that complain about everything. They're proactive, they're adaptive, they're open to new technologies, and so there are some good ones out there, and we do love to showcase the guys that do it right and get it right, because it's not all doom and gloom out there. And I don't, but there's enough of it, like everyone's, this is non-compliant, this is not compliant, look what they fucked up there. But no one's out there going, this is what gets done right and this is what gets done well. And when we do our reports and inspections, that's the first thing we try and drive is what's working and what looks good and what they've done well, and not trying to focus on what they haven't. But everyone just needs to be responsible for their own trade. And unfortunately, when you get squeezed everywhere you go, it's hard to focus on quality.
Look, last one. This is going to be a question that I'm going to ask you at the end of every episode that I come on to. So what is something that you believe about this industry that most people in it would completely disagree with?
I think we need to slow down. And I think we need to take stock. We need to give the design time to work its way through the design, rather than everyone rushing to get these 50 and 80 and 100%. Just get them out there, because time's money, and if we don't build this, we've got to meet the sales, and we've got to do this, we've got to get it up. It's progress. We just need to pump the brakes a little bit. It's almost like if you gave me an axe and you gave me 8 hours to cut the tree, you'd spend 7 hours sharpening the axe and 1 hour cutting the tree down. That's what we need in the building industry. We need to slow down. We need to make sure it's right. And I get that there's time pressures, and time's money, but it's almost like we are just rushing and racing to the bottom. Like we're all running around like headless chooks, trying to get this productivity out, trying to push everything to every direction, and everyone's maxed out. Yet we're still just continually pushing.
And so to put that in perspective for myself, is that, in a sense, we should stop looking at these projects as a job, and just start looking at them, for example, as someone's property you're building. So this is someone's house, this is someone's first home, this is someone's first commercial building that they're putting up. Is that what you're saying? That we should be looking at it in a more emotional perspective rather than more of a money-wise, time-wise, metric sort of system?
Yeah, essentially, yeah, it is. And it's hard, because as a business owner, time is money, and you would love all the time in the world. And I think that maybe a lot of people out there think that the design team are sitting back sucking lattes with their feet on the desk, drawing one line per minute or one line per hour. But with Perth, and this is going to be contrary to popular belief, but Perth, we obviously, as we know, is the urban sprawl. But what we're also seeing is a lot of infill. And so a lot of infill is so much more difficult to design. Not so much, well, it is from a plumbing perspective, but from an architect's perspective, you've got setbacks and you've got high rise, you've got limitations and you've got all that stuff going on. So the infill that, trying to get into infrastructure and everything's in the way and there's so much clutter going on. The sizes are smaller and we want everything so much more bigger. The infrastructure's, struggling. So to get all that and get it work, it just needs some time. Like, we're not building on greenfield sites. These brownfield sites, infill sites, they are difficult. They're difficult to design. They're difficult to get the yield, and they are difficult to get the services in and out. The spaces. It's like trying to design plumbing work in a fucking submarine. Like, it's difficult. Like, every millimetre counts. Ask any female out there. But maybe that's an inch. I don't know. But do you know what I mean? So yeah, every inch counts. But it is. And one design clash or something, and everything spits on its head, and all of a sudden you got pipe work in footings and all that sort of shit. So if we just took a breath, gave the design time to breathe and sort of understand what the limitations were, and I think we'll be all okay.
That's brilliant perspective.
The developers are not going to like that because they're like, fuck him, let's just get the fucking thing built and let me get my coin off the table and back in my pocket.
This has been great. I've loved this. This is the first new format. We're going to start doing monthly drops from now on. So happy fucking days.
Yep.
Pleasure, Russell.
Thanks for having me.